Amazing orcas. Orcas, also known as killer whales, are marine mammals. They belong to the suborder of toothed whales, known as odontocetes, but are also the largest member of the dolphin family. They are characterized and recognizable by black and white coloration and their quite large size. Orcas are incredibly popular as they are the most widely distributed of all whales and dolphins, found in every single ocean. They are very familiar with their black and white coloring, but actually, depending on where they live, have very different appearances, behavior, ways of communicating and diet. Find out some amazing facts below about the incredible orcas. Where do the orcas live? Ocean killer whales inhabit all oceans as well as larger seas. They prefer to swim in cold waters but are also found in warmer waters. They can be found in the waters of the Mediterranean Sea, as well as the much colder North Sea. What do orcas eat? The diet of killer whales is very varied. They eat small and large fish, herring, salmon, and even sharks. They also hunt dolphins and walruses. They will also not disdain penguins, seals, or octopuses. They usually hunt in groups, which allows them to attack larger individuals, for example, whales. The amount of food they need to eat each day corresponds to 5% of their body weight. Depending on their age and weight, killer whales eat about 250 kilograms per day. How much does a killer whale weigh? Killer whales are among the most dangerous predators in ocean waters. The body of an adult male is 6.7 to 9.8 meters long and weighs 4 to 9 tons. The female is slightly smaller, her body length ranges from 5.7 to 8.5 meters, and her weight ranges from 2.6 to 5.5 tons. Keiko, the most famous orca in the world. Keiko was born in 1977. He was captured in waters near Iceland in 1979. He gained fame all over the world thanks to his performance in the movie Free the Orc, where he played the role of Willy. Keiko died in captivity on December 12, 2003. Orcas stick to family groups called pods, which together form larger societal groups called clans. One of the ways clans, and even individual pods, are distinct from others is their language. Clans speak completely different languages. These large groups coming together would be like trying to have a conversation between an English speaker, a Russian speaker, and a Chinese speaker. While the pods that make up each clan all speak the same language, they each have a distinct dialect. It's much like how English speakers in the United States have Southern, New England, and Midwestern accents. These pods are made up of related mothers and their descendants, known as matrilinees. A male orca will stay with its mother for life, while daughters may spend time away after having calves of their own. Very often a pod will specialize in eating just one type of animal. For instance, one pod might have perfected its seal hunting skills over many generations and focus only on seals, while another pod might be awesome at chasing down salmon, so they ignore everything else. Orcas sleep with just one half of their brain at a time. They need to remain semi-awake all the time, so they can surface to breathe. Orcas can travel at a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. In one day, an adult individual can travel up to 150 kilometers. A wild orca pod can cover over 99 miles, 160 kilometers, a day, foraging and socializing. They live quite a long time, up to 50 to 90 years. The record holder lived to be 103 years old. Specimens in captivity live much shorter, about 25 years. A male orca can be nearly 33 feet, 10 meters, in length and weigh around 22,000 pounds, 1 ton. It's hard to see from the water's surface, but adult orcas are, on average, about as long as a small school bus, 19 to 26 feet long, and they can weigh up to 6 tons. The dorsal fin of a male orca is up to 6 feet, 2 meters, tall. Pregnancy in the female lasts about 17 to 18 months. They give birth to one baby at a time, which may nurse for up to 2 years. The young killer whale weighs about 150 kilograms and is 2 meters long. The baby is called a calf. Orca calves are born black and peachy orange in color, they're not born black and white. Scientists theorize that this is because calves are not born with a thick layer of blubber, therefore blood vessels near the surface of the skin result in this color pattern. Killer whales have around 45 teeth, each around 7.6 centimeters long. They are shaped for ripping and tearing prey. Instead of chewing their food, they take one big gulp, and believe it or not, these brilliant beasts can swallow small seals and sea lions whole. Bigger prey is ripped into chunks before being eaten. The female stops reproducing around 30 to 40 years of age. Then she goes through the menopause. Only 3 known species go through menopause: killer whales, short-fin pilot whales, and humans. Killer whales use a variety of sounds for communicating, socializing, and finding prey. These sounds include clicks, pulsed calls, and whistles. Their sounds are in the range of 0.1 kHz to about 40 kHz. Clicks are primarily used for echolocation, although they may also be used for communication. The pulsed calls of killer whales sound like squeaks and squawks and appear to be used for communication and socialization. They can produce sounds very rapidly, at a rate of up to 5,000 clicks per second. Different populations of killer whales make different vocalizations, and different pods within these populations may even have their own dialect. Some researchers can distinguish individual pods, and even matrilinees, the line of relationship that can be traced from one mother to her offspring, just by their calls. They belong to the social mammals. They stay in small groups of 5 to 50 representatives. Their leader is the most experienced female. When it dies, the herd disintegrates. They greet each other by rubbing their mouths together. Contrary to the popular opinion about the aggressive attitude of killer whales, there are no indications that they pose a threat to humans. No successful attack has ever been reported among those at large. Admittedly, an attempted attack was observed, but they were most likely the result of a mistake when they realized they had abandoned. Much more aggressive behavior of the killer whale in captivity can be observed. When a killer whale is on the surface, its heart beats 60 times a minute. This amount drops to 30 beats per minute when underwater. The shape of your temporal spots is inherited from your mother, father, or both. In the last case, the 2 spots are most often different from each other. Killer whales are among the fastest moving marine mammals. Adults can reach speeds of up to 30 miles per hour, approximately 48 kilometers. Killer whales, or orcas, have the second biggest brains among all ocean mammals, weighing as much as 15 pounds. It is not clear whether they are as well endowed with memory cells as humans, but scientists have found they are amazingly well wired for sensing and analyzing their watery, three-dimensional environment. The killer whale is the largest representative of the dolphin family. According to the rule, every dolphin is a whale, but not every whale is a dolphin. It is one of the largest toothed whales, second only to sperm whales and blue whales. Despite being called killer whales, orcas, Orcinus orca, are actually dolphins. Historically, sailors took to calling these marine mammals whale killers after witnessing them preying on whales and other marine mammals. The name orca comes from their Latin species name Orcinus orca, where Orcinus translates to mean kingdom of the dead. Orcas were long considered one species, but now it appears that there are several species, or at least, subspecies. Researchers are still figuring this out, of orcas. As researchers learn more about orcas, they have proposed separating the whales into different species or subspecies based on genetics, diet, size, vocalizations, location and physical appearance. In the southern hemisphere, proposed species include those referred to as Type A, Antarctic, large Type B, pack ice killer whale, small Type B, Lake killer whale, Type C, Ross Sea killer whale, and Type D, subantarctic killer whale. In the northern hemisphere, proposed types include resident killer whales, bigs, transient, killer whales, offshore killer whales, and Type 1 and 2 eastern North Atlantic killer whales. Determining species of killer whales is important not only in gaining information about the whales but in protecting them. It is difficult to determine the abundance of killer whales without even knowing how many species there are. There are 59 orcas in captivity all over the world. Killer whales, more properly known as orcas, have been kept in captivity since 1961. Helpless victims of a blatantly commercial experiment that has seen dozens of wild orcas plucked from their families and forced to live in artificial social groupings which bear scant resemblance to their natural order. As of August 2022, there were 59 killer whales held in captivity in 8 countries. 28 of them were in the United States. Of these killer whales, 18 were captured from the wild and the rest was born and raised in captivity. Orcas are highly intelligent and able to coordinate hunting tactics. Orcas use many different techniques to catch prey. Number 1. The wave wash. Seals are a favorite food item of orcas living around the Antarctic ice shelf. By perching on ice floes, seals stay just out of reach. However, killer whales have devised a clever way to dump the seals into the water. They charge the ice floe in tight formation, creating a huge wave front. Just before reaching the ice, they dive underneath, giving a last-second push to the wave with their tails. The resulting wall of water crashes over the ice floe and sweeps the seal off. Number 2. The karate chop. The great white, the largest predatory shark in the world, has only one natural enemy, the orca. But hunting sharks is a risky business for killer whales. Rows of razor-sharp teeth can pierce even the thickest whale hide. Accordingly, the orca has developed an efficient way to dispatch these sharp-toothed snack items. Using its broad tail, the killer whale pushes the shark to the surface on a watery vortex. It then turns slightly and raises its tail high into the air, crashing it down on the shark's head. The next part is quite amazing. As though it has some knowledge of shark biology, the orca flips the shark over, sending it into a stupor that scientists call tonic immobility. Now paralyzed, the shark makes for an easy, and safe, meal. Number 3. The carousel. Small fish like herring aren't even a bite-sized snack for killer whales, which makes chasing down individual fish not worth the effort. Orcas off the Norwegian coast don't let such inconveniences get in the way of a meal. Working together, they use a combination of air bubbles and belly flashes to herd schools of fish into a tight ball near the surface of the water. This churning bait ball resembles a rotating carousel, which may have given this method its name, carousel feeding. The orcas slap the ball with their tails, stunning the fish, which makes them easier to gulp down by the mouthful. Number 4. The pod pen. Narwhals are medium-sized toothed whales who gather to breed amidst Arctic pack ice. Historically, killer whales haven't been able to access their breeding grounds, but vanishing sea ice has changed that. Killer whales chase down an entire pod of narwhal and then, in a formation similar to the wave wash, charge the pod, pinning the narwhal in shallow water. Number 5. The blowhole block. Orcas don't limit themselves to eating animals smaller than themselves. They've been observed attacking much larger cetaceans such as gray, humpback and even blue whales. Orcas are sometimes called the wolves of the sea, and like their terrestrial counterpart the gray wolf, they tend to single out young or weak individuals when hunting large prey. The attack follows a familiar pattern. The orcas take turns ramming, biting, and pulling on the whale's pectoral fins and generally wearing it down. Then they launch from the water onto the whale's back, trying to prevent its blowhole from breaching the surface of the water. After a chase that can go on for hours, the exhausted giant drowns. The orcas then go to work stripping the whale's most nutritious bits, its tongue and blubber, leaving the rest of the carcass for scavengers. Number 6. The most spectacular of them all is called storming the beach. Sea lions swimming off the Atlantic coast of South America probably breathe a little easier once they've made it back to the beach. After all, they seem to be safely out of reach of orcas lurking in deeper waters nearby. That false sense of security is quickly dashed when an orca charges the shore and snatches the sea lion, beaching itself in the process. The orca is the only whale known to purposely beach itself. It uses a flapping, hopping motion to shuffle its enormous body back into the water. Like any whale, a killer whale can regulate blood pressure in the brain and in the heart when diving to bigger depths, limiting the loss of oxygen in the blood, and extending the time spent underwater. In the wild, orcas travel great distances in search of food. Temporary and offshore plowing, they can travel several hundred kilometers a day to catch up with a herd of cetacean mammals or to spawn herring. Orcas have evolved a complex culture, a suite of behaviors animals learn from one another. They communicate with distinctive calls and whistles. They can live 60 years or more, and they stay in tight-knit matrilineal groups led by older females that model specific behaviors to younger animals. The weight of fish or meat consumed by plowing each day must correspond to about 5% of its body weight. This means the fact that a killer whale eats about 250 kilograms of food daily, depending on the age, sex, and physiological condition of the animal. In the stomach of one of the dead killer whales they found, the researchers found the remains of 7 seals and over 100 kilograms of herring. The pack of killer whales, after hunting a newborn calf or an extremely weak adult, will only eat the tongue and lips of a slain animal. It is a delicacy for them, and although it is incomprehensible to us, most often the rest of the prey is abandoned by the orcs. Each herd or group of killer whales has a unique dialect that newborn killer whales learn from their elders individuals and, of course, from their mothers. The oldest individuals use the dialect best. Interestingly, orcas of distinct types speak in such different dialects that it is comparable to a conversation of two foreigners from separate continents. They were given the name killer whale by ancient sailors who saw them preying on large whales. Orcas are still hunted in some countries, such as Greenland. Orcas are apex predators. They are at the top of the oceanic food chain and have no natural predators. Humans have not even spent much time hunting killer whales because of their speed and streamlined bodies. In wild populations of resident killer whales, flock members never leave their families. Even adult bulls stay with their mothers for life, mating with females from the herds they meet common feeding grounds. Growing male transient killer whales leave their families, often forming male killer whales clans, and when they reach sexual maturity, swim alone in search of females. With orcs type, the offshore herd structure has not yet been well studied. Orca is a cosmopolitan species, which means that it occurs over a very wide geographical area. However, it has been scientifically confirmed that most killer whales prefer cooler waters, while as many as 3 of the subspecies are only seen in areas of Antarctica. A killer whale's brain is about 5 times larger than that of a human. After humans, orcas are the most widespread mammal in the animal kingdom. The species ranges from the Arctic to the Antarctic and can be found everywhere, from the freezing waters of the north and south to the warm waters along the equator, including the Hawaiian Islands, Galapagos Islands, and the Gulf of California. Not only have orcas been seen in all of the world's oceans, but they have also been spotted in freshwater rivers. One even swam more than 100 miles up the Columbia River in Oregon as it hunted fish. After a successful hunt, orcs tend to play with their food. This behavior is scientifically called foraging. Researchers believe that the orcs play with their food 60% of the time they spend eating. It is also one of the few species on Earth that most likely kills for pleasure. They can control the flow of blood to their organs. Indeed, orcas are able to control the flow of blood to their hearts and brains, which keeps them from suffering from a lack of oxygen when they are deep underwater. They spend most of their time looking for food. Killer whales spend 60% of their time foraging for food. Killer whales do not migrate, but they have been known to travel hundreds of miles to find fresh food that is in season. The English name of this species, killer whale, dates back to the 18th century, when Spanish whalers were witness killer whales hunt for whale. They then named them asesinaballenas, which is what killer whales. As a result of a poor translation from Spanish to English, Killer whales began to be nicknamed killer whales and hence their notoriety, which stuck to them until the 1960s. The second name, English, orca, is much older. Already the Romans called these animals orcs, and the origin of the word orcinus comes from earlier times and means from the kingdom of death or belonging to Orcus, the god of the underworld from Roman mythology. The Haida Indians worshipped the orcs as gods and believed that they had tremendous power. They were convinced that underwater orcas live in their own homes and form complex communities. Every tribe member after death was to become an orc. Orcas were long considered one species, but now it appears that there are several species, or at least, subspecies. Researchers are still figuring this out, of orcas. As researchers learn more about orcas, they have proposed separating the whales into different species or subspecies based on genetics, diet, size, vocalizations, location, and physical appearance. In the southern hemisphere, proposed species include those referred to as Type A, Antarctic, large Type B, pack ice killer whale, small Type B, Lake killer whale, Type C, Ross Sea killer whale, and Type D, subantarctic killer whale. In the northern hemisphere, proposed types include resident killer whales, bigs, transient, killer whales, offshore killer whales, and Type 1 and 2 eastern North Atlantic killer whales. Determining species of killer whales is important not only in gaining information about the whales but in protecting them. It is difficult to determine the abundance of killer whales without even knowing how many species there are. Orcas can't smell. We are reasonably certain killer whales cannot smell because they lack the smelling organs and even the portion of the brain that is responsible for this sensation. All toothed whales lack olfactory lobes in their brains and olfactory nerves, proving they are odorless. Since killer whales are air-breathing mammals that spend most of their time underwater, their sense of smell would be largely inactive.